Good morning, Rabbi Sai. So basically, we will be discussing, do you have the power, just in your mind, do you have the influence over a shoichet? You're the owner of that animal. Does your thought have an influence on what the kohen in the Beis Hamikdash does, on what a shoichet outside of the Beis Hamikdash does? So for instance, if you bring a carbon to the Beis Hamikdash and you're standing on the side, do you have the power and the influence to influence the kohen's shechita and say, oh, it's not going to be a chatas, it's going to be a shlamim, it's not going to be a carbon, it's going to be avodah zara. You're the owner. Maybe you have the right to put a thought into his shechita, his zrika. And the same thing would apply if a Jew is shechting a non-Jewish animal. Even today, Arabs, they'll rely on a Jewish shechita. It's considered halal for them because it's shechted. So suppose, imagine, and the Gemara talks about Arabs actually, that they were avodah zarah, today not so, but back in the day they were. So a Jew is doing the halal process for him, he gets paid for it. He does halal. And the Arab puts a machshava of avodah zarah into the shechita. Says this is for an idol. As this Jew is doing the action, the owner, could he insert his machshava in it? What do you guys think?
Verbally or just in thinking?
So that's also part of the discussion. And in fact, it's all machlokes. All these things are machlokes. So says the Mishnah, Hashoichet lo'ovid gechavim shchitat siksheira. So Tana Kama says that we don't have to be concerned about the owner, the guy. So therefore, the shechita is kosher, and you, the Jew, can actually purchase meat from this non-Jew. Rebbe Lezer Paisel. Rebbe Lezer holds that the non-Jew, the guy, could insert his avodah zarah thought into your shechita, your Jewish shechita. You can insert the avodah zarah into it. Omer Rebbe Lezer. Afilu shachta lecha lo'ovid gechavim mechatzar kavod shela. So that day that we did the shechita, we saw the diaphragm, we saw the chatzar kavod. It's called a skirt steak in English. It's a wall that divides the liver. So even if the non-Jew owns that very small piece of steak, so even if he owns that little diaphragm, psula, he's a owner, he has a partnership in this animal, a small partnership, he has the avodah to ruin it. Why? Because the norm of a guy, of someone, or idol worshipper, is always for avodah zarah. Omar Rabbi Yosi, Kavachomer hadvarim. Says Rabbi Yosi in the Gemara, if you don't understand the Kavachomer right away, the Gemara is going to give us the details of the Kavachomer. In the Beis Hamikdash, we had, if you weren't with us, I feel bad, but if you are, the whole Masechtas Zvachim talks about the thought process of the kohen and how he could ruin the korbanos at the 4 stages. There's 4 famous stages. Here, I'll just throw it on the screen for the newbies. The shechita, forget the bottom ones; those are all part of the mincha. Shechita, kabbalah, hoilacha, and zrika. During those 4 processes of shechting and receiving the blood and bringing it to the mizbech, and then doing the zrika, throwing the blood on the mizbech, which is the most important one. Throughout that whole process, you could think thoughts that destroy the carbon. Literally, that if you eat from the carbon later, you get misa. It's that bad. So, says Rabbi Yosi, in the Beis Hamikdash, when the whole idea of ruining it with your thought applies, Ein hakol hoylech ela acha oved. Only the kohen has the right to have a thought, not the owner. The owner has no right. So when it comes to, let's say, avodah zara outside of the Beis Hamikdash with just your regular animal, and it's certainly a non-shoichet should not have superpowers in his mind to change the designation of this animal and think, oh, I'm the owner, this animal, I'm turning it into avodah zara. In the Beis Hamikdash, you can't do that if you're the owner. And in the Beis Hamikdash, that's where the whole thing originated from. The whole idea of pigul, of ruining the carbon, is in the Beis Hamikdash. You can't do it in the Beis Hamikdash. If you're the owner, you don't have any power over the animal. So certainly outside the Beis Hamikdash, the guy doesn't have power to make it into Avodah Zarah. Hani Tanoi, the Tanoim in the Mishnah, Tanakama, Rebbe Lezer, Islu the Rebbe Lezer, Rebbe Yossi. They both. What's machlokes? The Tanakama says that we don't care about the guy. He doesn't insert a machshava of Avodah Zarah. Rebbe Lezer says he does. They both hold of Rebbe Lezer, Rebbe Yossi. But they come out with different opinions. That what? The say Rebbe Lezer, Rebbe Yossi. Shamati shebal mefaglim. I heard that as the kohen is performing the avodah, the owner could be mefagel. Miu. So what's the machlokes? Tanagam sover ishaminu if shamine de choshev in. If you heard it come out of his mouth, okay. Eloi loi, but you didn't hear anything, so you can't assume anything. So therefore, he didn't make it Avodah Zarah. Stam machshav sovet gechavim Avodah Zarah lo yamrinon. To say that this guy's a groisa oivid Avodah Zarah, we don't say that. Even though you didn't hear it directly from his mouth, stam machshav sovet gechavim Avodah Zarah amrinon. But you could assume that that's his thought, and his thought does have effect on this animal. So the third sheet in the Mishnah is even if you heard the chashiv that he said mifurish, you heard from the guy's mouth that it's Avodah Zarah, it means nothing. Why? This guy is performing a shechita, and this guy Muhammad is thinking of Avodah Zarah. It doesn't affect the shechita of the Jew. Okay, so that's one way to look at it. No. There's a machlokes even when you heard it directly from the guy's mouth. Yes, I agree there's something called that the owner is mefago, but that's only bifnim. That's why I brought this Beis Hamikdash here. Not because Yosef is here, my brother Yosef, but because bifnim, I want to, bifnim is not a word, it's a thing. We're in the Beis Hamikdash. Inside here, you could have thoughts to ruin the carbon. That's only inside the Beis Hamikdash. Outside of the Beis Hamikdash, right over here, any other place besides the Beis Hamikdash in the entire world, it doesn't work. Why? I don't learn outside of the Beis Hamikdash to inside. I don't learn Avodah Zarah from a carbon. So he holds taka. Rebbe Eliezer, no, I do learn any carbon from the carbon, any shechting from the carbonis of the Beis Hamikdash. Just like in the Beis Hamikdash, the owner has an effect on the shechita. So too outside the Beis Hamikdash. That's why if a Jew is shechting an animal and the owner, the guy, has a thought, his thought, it's unbelievable. His thought transfers into the animal and ruins the animal. Makes it Avodah Zarah. So the Gemara, V'asar Rabbi Yossi l'meimar, comes Rabbi Yossi and he says, Afilu b'fnim nami, and he holds pretty much like, I think that's the standard shita, that even inside the Beis Hamikdash, the Bailam doesn't have powers over the animal. He can't insert his power into the Kain Shchita. You're the owner, you're Yisrael, you can think whatever you want, you're not going to affect it. Itmar. HaShoichet es ha-behema lizrik damal Avodah Zarah ulahak yechel bel Avodah Zarah. So now we're going into a sugya called me'avoida la'avoida. These are the four avodas, right? Every pigol in the world, basically, is me'avoida la'avoida. For the most part. Because if you're having a thought during shechita, what's your thought? Not that you're going to do shechita somewhere else. You're thinking during shechita, where are you going to do the zrika? Where are you going to eat the animal? Where are you going to put the animal? When are you going to put the animal's parts on the mizbeach? That's the problem of pigul. Pigul means I'm thinking to myself, anything that has to do with eating, even the mizbeach's food, so to speak. So I think to myself, I'm going to do zrika tomorrow. As I'm doing shechita, as I'm doing the one on the right, I'm thinking about the one on the left. Isn't that's ma'avoida la'avoida, and that's what pigul is. So what about in shechita? Do I say avoida la'avoida as I'm shechting the carbon? Now, if I'm shechting a carbon, and I think to myself, I'm shechting this, not carbon. If I'm shechting an animal outside in my garage, at home, I'm shechting an animal l'shem avodah zara. Is that avodah zara? Is it avodah zara? Everybody agrees it's avodah zara. There's no question that you chayiv misa, and this animal is asur b'hana. Not only that, there, Lauren, you hear this? This animal there's something. Think about. We learned in Zvachim that this animal not only is it asur b'hana and asur for you to eat, but there's also something super duper with this animal. Think what it is. What could it be? Something really, really bad. Huh? No?
It's a tummy.
Oh! It's not stam tame, it's tame ba'oil. Everybody in the room becomes tame. That's how severe. So if I shech this animal with a knife and I say this is avodah zarah, the whole building goes up in red. It's like it's a zivchei mason. But what if I think during the shechita that I'm going to throw the blood l'shem avodah zarah? Could I transfer my thought of shechita to the zrika when it comes to avodah zarah outside the Beis Hamikdash? Inside the Beis Hamikdash, obviously it works, but outside, that's the question. Here's another trick question. What if I think to myself that I'm going to take the parts of this animal that I'm shechting right now during the shechita, and I'm going to put them on my bama in the backyard? Is that avodah zarah? 100% it's avodah zarah. It's avodah zarah. Does it make the animal puzzle? Are you chayiv misa? Yes, 100%. Does it make the animal puzzle? No. Why not? Because that occurs after the zrika. That's already the putting on in the Beis Hamikdash, putting the parts of the animal on the mizbeach is after you're already done. So I can't ruin the animal after I'm done. Let's say you have a piece of meat in your refrigerator ready to eat, and then I say, oh, this is avodah zarah. It's not going to work. You're oived avodah zarah, but it doesn't affect the meat. So I'm just putting it into this line over here. Zrika is a problem. Zrika is very much avodah zarah, and you're chayiv misa for saying it. But the question is, does it have an effect on the animal? But the next line, to put the chaylev, the fats, the parts that go on the mizbeach for avodah zarah, that's already too late. That's already post the zrika. So now the question is, could I have an effect on when I do my shechita? Could I think about another avodah called zrika? Rebbe says yes, psula, it's asur b'hana. Pasul over here means asur b'hana. Reb Shimon ben Lakish Omar, muteres, it's not a problem. You're chayiv misa, but you're mutter. What does mutter mean? The animal is mutter. You are chayiv misa, but you can have a great steak before you die. Rebbe Omar psula. Rebbe Yochanan says, because I could put my thought during shechita about zrika in it. Why? It's not vi. It's why. Because because I'm learning avodah zarah from pigul. Pigul is inside the Beis Hamikdash. Avodah zarah is outside. I can learn the outside from the inside. And Rish Lakish says it's not a problem with the meat. You are chayiv misa, but it's not a problem with the meat. Why? I cannot go from shechita to zrika in my mind. Why? Because I don't learn avodah zarah from in the Beis Hamikdash. Of course we go ma'avodah la'avodah. That's not even a question. Says the Gemara, v'azul l'tamayu the itmar shchot l'shma l'zruk dam l'shma, because they go according to their own shita. There's another machlokes, a very, very similar machlokes somewhere else. And the Gemara says that this machlokes over here by avodah zarah is similar to that machlokes over there. And then the Gemara is going to ask, so if so, why do they have to argue in two different things that are the same thing? It's the same. Now, if I were to ask you, where in Shas does it mention Rish Lakish and Reb Shimon ben Lakish within the same lines? Where would you say? Oh, you're looking over there. He says, I just said it. You're right, I just said it. But when I asked Reb Menachem Mendel Fenster a few days ago, I said, as a joke, I said, why does it say, sometimes it says Reb Shimon ben Lakish, sometimes it says Rish Lakish. I was just trying to bother him. So he says, Ayin daf lamed tes samad aleph on the top. So here we are. We just passed it. I just went a few lines weiter on purpose. So it says in line number 6, it says Reb Shimon ben Lakish Omar Muteres. And then it says in line 8, Rish Lakish Omar Muteres. So over here, he's trying to prove that's the same person. We're explaining why Rish Shimon Rish Lakish says mutter, and the Gemara explains Rish Lakish or Muteres. It's in the same line. It's the same human being. You can't say it's two different people. And you can't say that he was younger or older. He was a Talmud then. It's the same person. So sometimes it just says like this, something like that, and that's how he. But his mind works in a very different way than a regular human being. Okay. Okay. Rabbi say it's the same thing, the same idea. We remember the first Mishnah of Zvachim. It says the idea of Lishma. What does Lishma mean? Usually it means like you have to have kavana for a mitzvah. Over there it means that if you're shechting a carbon chatos, you cannot switch its designation to a shlamim, let's say. If you bring a carbon chatas to the Beis Hamikdash and the kohen thinks to himself that's not a chatas, it's a shlamim, he's over on shalei l'shma. There's only two korbanos you can do it to: a chatos and a Pesach. That's it. So, but it's very similar to pigul. It's the same idea, but it's different. Pigul is I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to eat it at the wrong time, and this is I'm bringing another type of carbon. Instead of a chatos, it's a shlamim. I started off this chatas very good. I shechted it with the proper intent that it's a chatas. But I'm thinking to myself, you know what? In 5 minutes, when I throw the blood on the mizbeach, I'm going to throw it as if it's a shlamim. I'm allowed to jump in my mind from shchita to Zrika. That I'm learning the lishma, the problem of jumping from carbon to carbon, from chatas to shlamim. I'm going to learn from pigul that I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to eat this animal after its time. You cannot go from one avodah to another avodah. And I don't learn from pigul. So Gemara is saying basically it's the same machlokes as we just mentioned with avodah zara. Do I learn machshava to machshava? Utzricha diitmar baha kamar Reb Shimon ben Lakish mishum dechutz b'fneim lo yalfinon. Oh, if I just said this machlokes bayos and our suga by avodah zara, it's because avodah zara it's outside of the Beis Hamikdash, so I don't learn the outside from the inside. Michutz lo yalfinon ava pnim b'fneim, but the shma, the chatas that we changed the designation to shlamim and pigul, they're all done inside the Beis Hamikdash. Maybe perhaps you could go from one machshava to another, from shchita to zrika. And if I only said the lishma, it's a simple tzrichusa. It goes both ways. If I only spoke about the lishma case that's inside the Beis Hamikdash, even Rabbi Yochanan admits over there. Rabbi Yochanan admits that you learn pigul from you learn lishma from pigul. Al baha and Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. But when it comes to avodah zara, maybe the mitzvah Rish Lakish, that's not a problem because it's outside of Beis Hamikdash. Tzricha, you can go. You need the machlokes in both cases. That what do you go from shchita to zrika in your mind or not? What's the Rav Sheshes? Rav Sheshes asked the question, and the Gemara is going to say at the end. I'm just pointing it out. His name is Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes is going to answer the question. So he asks a very simple question that really needs explanation. What do we learn in the Mishnah? In a place where your thought ruins it in the Beis Hamikdash. Now Rashi points out that the word poisel, if the person is doing pigul in the Beis Hamikdash, what would it say? It would say, why does it say poiselas? Poiselas might be talking about even the case of lishma. I can ruin it, so to speak, by thinking instead of that it's a chaz, it's a shlamim. That works in the Beis Hamikdash. It says Rabbi Yossi, only the kohen has the power to change it and to ruin it. But outside of the Beis Hamikdash, where your mind doesn't work, it doesn't have control. And it did. Now, what's the question right here? Outside of the Beis Hamikdash, your mind doesn't have control. Of course, your mind has control. If you think about while you're shechting an animal, you think in your mind that it's an avodah zara. There's no greater avodah zara than that. That is avodah zara. And then so the Gemara asks, what does it mean your mind doesn't have control? It's the cloud that it doesn't have any effect. It's the krevis avodah zara. The Krayvus Avodah Zarah actually changes the designation. It makes it, huh?
It's like the Baal or the Shochet.
The Shochet. But Rabbi Yossi is saying, Rabbi Yossi says about the Shochet. He says, in a place where the Shochet has no effect on the animal outside the Beis HaMikdash, so of course the Bailam doesn't have an effect. But he starts with the Shochet. In the Beis HaMikdash, the Shochet has an effect, the owner has zero effect. So outside of the Beis HaMikdash, where the Shochet, the so to speak Kohen, has zero effect, so certainly the owner has no effect. What do you mean the Shochet doesn't have an effect? The Shochet can make it into Avodah Zarah by thinking about it. It means that do you have an effect? Of course you have an effect during the Shechita to say that it's Avodah Zarah. But do you have the effect while you're shechting to say that I'm going to do Zrika Avodah Zarah? Could I go from one Avodah to Avodah Zarah in my mind? And so Mela, the Kavachim is like this. In the Beis HaMikdash, even if I think Pigol or Lishma, Poisel is Lishma, even if I think that it's Shlomim instead of a Chatos, like you saw in the video, it ruins it from one Avodah, and I have the effect, Avodah. During the Shechita, I'm thinking that I'm going to do the Zrika for Shlomim, but it's only, who has an effect, says Rabbi Yossi, only the Kohen, not the owner. So outside of Beis HaMikdash, where I shecht an animal during Shechita, I cannot think about Zrika for Avodas Kechavim. I can only focus on the Shechita. If I during the Shechita I say it's Avodah Zarah, you're right, it works. But not, I can't jump to another Avodah. And it didn't. So therefore I have a Kavachomer that only the person performing the Shechita can do it, and not the owner. And so then why are you so concerned about the owner, the guy, inserting his thought of Avodah Zarah into your Shechita? Says the Gemara, Pnim Kashel Reb Shimon ben Lakish, Chutz Kashel Reb Yochanan. I think this makes it so easy. What does Rabbi Yossi just say? What did he just? Oh, I wanted to change it. I forgot. Machshava ma'avoda la'avoda. Gershon, could you change these words afterwards? Where it says machshava, just put the word machshava instead of that little. I don't like that guy. I don't know why he did. Machshava ma'avoda la'avoda. Gam l'shma b'fnim v'loy b'chutz. I just wrote this lashon. That what? It's based on Rashi. That what? I could think from shchita to Zrika, even in a chatas and a shlamim in l'shma, inside the Beis HaMikdash, not outside the Beis HaMikdash. So what's the problem with that? Two problems. Rish Lakish doesn't work with the l'shma part, and Rabbi Yochanan doesn't work with the outside part. Why? Take a look. The words are going to jump. Oops. No. Don't change it now. Don't change it now. Oh, it's changed already. Okay, fine. All right, it's there. Now, Rish Lakish says you cannot think about the Shema from one Avodah to Avodah, and Rabbi Yossi says we're assuming that Rish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan go with Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Yossi said this from one Avodah to the other only inside the Beis HaMikdash, not v'loy b'chutz. Rabbi Yochanan says it works even outside. So we can say there's one problem for each mandamar. So says the Gemara, Bishleim apnim l'Reb Shimon ben Lakish leKashya. This is fascinating. Before Rish Lakish heard it from his Rebbe, Rashi calls him his Rebbe. Yeah, you throughout Shas they argue. Rish Lakish always argues with Rish Lakish, right? So before, and here's the crazy thing. According to one Pshat and Rashi says, before he heard this Mishnah from Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi, Svara de Rabbi. He was arguing on the logic. And once he heard it's a Mishnah, he said, okay, I can't argue on the logic. Ask Taisvis. Look at this small little Taisvis. We do all Taisvis, especially if they're small. Basically, I think Taisvis is very bothered by this. Rish Lakish doesn't know a Mishnah. Now, because if Rish Lakish was like a beginner, you want to tell me, oh, he's a beginner. He wouldn't be arguing with Rabbi Yochanan. He has no right to argue with him. So Elamai is in a darga of arguing with Rabbi Yochanan, so he doesn't know a Mishnah. That's why there's another Pshat in Rashi also. Okay. Rabbi Yochanan says that you could go from one avodah to another avodah even outside the Beis HaMikdash. The same Rav Sheshes, that's the question, answer the question. Ba'arba avodah is beautiful, very simple Pshat. We were learning ma'avodah la'avodah, two avodas. That what? I'm going from, as I'm shechting, I'm thinking to myself, what am I going to do by the Zrika? No. That's not the pshat at all. Arba avodas means literally. Avodas means the four famous avodas. I can think at the shechita that I'm ruining it. I can think by the Kabbalah I'm ruining it. I can think by. I'm not jumping from the right to the left, from Shechita to Zrika. All I'm saying is that in the Beis Hamikdash there's 4 avodas, and outside the Beis Hamikdash are how many avodas? Only 2. That's what I'm saying. So that's the beautiful Kavachimer, where I have 4 avodas that can ruin it. Only the Kohen can ruin it. So when I only have 2 avodas, then certainly only the Shaychit can ruin it. It's more avodas, more possibilities, and only one person can do it. That's the kasher. And I call in a place outside the Beis Hamikdash, there's only Shechita and Zrika. And it is so certainly only the Kohen should be able to do, or the Shaychit should be able to do and ruin this animal, and not the owner. What are we going to do here? Wow. Tanya give us say the Rabbi Yochanan. That what? Rabbi Yochanan says that you could ruin it from Shechita to Zrika. That as you're doing a Shechita outside the Beis Hamikdash, you can think to yourself, oh, I'm going to do the Zrika for Avodah Zarah. It says, Lizrik, you tired? Hashoichet, it's a behema lizrik doma. Nebuch, he was woken up at 6 o'clock. Hashoichet is a behema lizrik doma la'avodah zara ulahak techel b'la'avodah zara. Hashoichet is a behema lizrik doma la'avodah zara ulahak techel b'la'avodah zara areil zivchei meisim. As he's doing the shechita, he's thinking about zrika. So that's from avodah to avodah, just like Rabbi Yochanan said, and it makes it terrible. It's a zivchei meisim. Shchot v'achagachi shevaleo. Oh, here's a question. What if? What do we do? What do we do here? We stop here. It's already we're an hour into Shir. It's an hour into Shir. It's 8:20. Okay, we're gonna have to stop here and figure it out. Rabbi Sai, have a wonderful, quiet day. B'suras Tovos.
Merit the schus of spreading Torah throughout the world. Sponsor a Shir today. MDYsponsor.com or sponsor at MDY.com.